You're listening to This is Yoga Therapy. I'm your host, Michelle Lawrence, and I've had the opportunity to interview many of those who are making a difference at the intersections of yoga and health. And I'm here to share with you their stories and conversations. Thanks for listening. Welcome. And in today's episode, I'm absolutely delighted to be speaking with Dr. Katy Jain. Dr. Katy is a Vedic scholar. She's a Sanskrit expert and a spiritual facilitator who teaches yoga teachers and offers online Vedic astrology immersions. And she earned her doctorate in religious studies from the University of California in Santa Barbara way back in 2001. She also studied Sanskrit, Hindi, and Bengali in Calcutta, India. Dr. Katy taught at the University of Colorado and at Naropa University in Boulder. She created Sanskrit for Yogis, a traditional method for learning the sacred language of yoga, and she's the author of Awakening with Sanskrit. She also writes for Embodied Philosophy. Dr. Katy lives in Dunagiri Retreat in the Himalayan foothills of India with her husband and five Tibetan Mastiffs?
Well, now we have only 4, unfortunately.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I can picture you with them, though. I think you must have shared some photos of them on social media.
Oh, yeah.
Well, over the past 15 years, I've had the pleasure of working with Dr. Katy in a variety of ways. We kind of go back, don't we?
I know. It's so wonderful. Yeah. Durango days.
Yes, when you were more of a Colorado resident and you were a faculty member in my local Yoga Durango teacher training programs that I used to run in Durango. And you've also been a Vedic counselor for my own personal readings through the years. And I'll never forget the first time I met you, Katy, in a workshop at the Telluride Yoga Festival. And
okay.
I was so captivated. Yeah. And this is the first time I've ever had you on the podcast, or really anyone, to talk about Jyotisha. And so it's, with all that said, it's just so wonderful to be in conversation with you here today.
Oh, yeah, likewise. And all the listeners as well.
That's right. Well, maybe you can share with our listeners a brief background on yourself. I certainly shared the highlights on your bio, but how did you come to study yoga and Sanskrit and Jyotish? And how did you end up where you are today?
Oh, it's such a long story, but the short of it is that I had a near-death experience when I was in high school, and as a result, I started really questioning why we're here, what's the purpose of being born, those existential type questions. And my English teacher gave me an autobiography of a yogi as a gift. To help me with my questioning. And that started my spiritual search. That sent me on many trips to India looking for Mahavatar Babaji, and got me into Kriya Yoga, and led me to be exposed to Sanskrit. And that sent me down the rabbit hole of wanting to deeply immerse myself in the incredible Vedic scriptures that, go into the spiritual journey. So, it's kind of a long story, but that's the short version of it. And Jyotisha was just an accident because my sister wanted me to read charts for her and her coworkers who were losing their jobs. And it was just a hobby for me because I had studied Sanskrit and Vedic studies. Jyotisha is a limb of the Vedas. And after that, then they referred their friends and they referred their friends. And next thing I knew, I was working in this way.
Cool. And how interesting that your English teacher gave you the autobiography of a yogi as well.
I know. I was born in 1968, so the United States, during the time that I was growing up, was in a great big social and spiritual political change. And pretty much all of my teachers in grade school and in high school were all hippies, consciousness people. So I feel really blessed to have, had that opportunity to kind of live vicariously through their revolution and be influenced by them.
Yeah. I'm not too far behind you myself in terms of birth year, and experienced a bit of that around me, although my circumstances were confined some of that. We won't go into that. Well, let's also do a brief introduction to Jyotisha, one of the Vedic sciences. Can you describe to our listeners what it is and how understanding your Vedic birth chart or life's blueprint, I think I've seen you kind of refer to it in that way, can help get clarity and self-validation? I know that's been true for me. And maybe in this little introduction or description here, maybe how does Jyotisha sit alongside yoga and Ayurveda?
Okay, a lot of parts to those questions. So, first of all, oftentimes the word Jyotisha is translated as astrology, Vedic astrology. And we have a connotation about that word, anywhere from fatalism, superstition, to spiritual bypassing, meaning that, all my problems are because Mercury has turned retrograde. But the real definition, I think the really accurate definition of the word Jyotisha in Sanskrit is the eye of wisdom. And to understand it, we really have to look at quantum physics, in particular the observer effect. And the observer effect teaches us that the seer, in the process of seeing, manifests the reality that is being projected. I mean, forgive me if there's any physicists in the house and if I'm overly simplifying it. But Jyotisha is based on that same principle, that where I put my attention is my free will. The problem is we don't know where best to put the power of our attention or intention to manifest the outcome, the highest outcome that was destined for us at birth or imprinted in our consciousness at birth. And so we try all kinds of cockamamie things, like maybe I'll be a supermodel, ignoring the fact that I'm 5'2" and that ship has sailed in terms of the age. But within the time and the location of my birth, according to an array of planets and stars above me, my consciousness has been imprinted with a set of core competencies, characteristics, a particular life plan. This is the basis of Jyotisha, and how they came up with this idea, I have no idea. I can't explain that, nor can I explain it in scientific terms. So this is when the hardcore scientists exit the building, because we can't explain how Saturn, for example, so far away can have an influence on us. But nevertheless, that's the basis of the system of Jyotisha. And it takes it further that array gives us a particular set of qualities and characteristics that if I use the power of my attention on them and their highest outcome, I will enact what they are meant to give me. I will manifest them. So Jyotisha is a tool for enlightenment, enlightened living, which is also the definition. Jyotisha means to awaken or to enlighten through the power of our deep intuitive knowing. So when we have our birth chart read, for example, we're not being told something that has no basis in the reality of who we are. You're meant to see yourself in that kind of reading. And in seeing your highest possibilities, you co-participate with them, you co-create them. It's really a very wrong use of Jyotisha to project a lot of fatalistic outcomes. Some people get really worried that, you're going to tell me all the negative things. And some astrologers do that. And that's detrimental. It's a misunderstanding of what this system is. And so you asked about Ayurveda and yoga and the connection between the two. And, I'll begin with Ayurveda. Ayurveda and Jyotisha are sister sciences. And they're based on this understanding in the Vedic tradition that there's no separation between the mind and the body. As the mind thinks, there goes the physical reality. So with Ayurveda, I mean, we're not just treating the body, but we also have to treat the mind that has created the body or the imbalance. So Jyotisha deals with that healing of the mind, how you may be misperceiving your reality and projecting something that is detrimental to a more balanced and happy outcome. So Jyotisha corrects that perception. Here, look at it this way. This is the more healthy, more aligned, or we would say dharmic way. In Ayurvedic language, that would be your prakriti, your most natural and best expression. And we align with that first with the mind. And then the body we put in balance. So in that way, Ayurveda and Jyotisha go together hand in hand. Yoga is the discipline, according to what Patanjali says, yoga shchitta vritti nirodha, we pull back the mind that is projecting. A vritti is a projection. We pull back that mind so that the seer can abide in itself. When you have your birth chart read, it is kind of like a mini experience of enlightenment. The seer abides in itself. For the first time in your life, you may be listening to your life story being told to you from a space of detached clarity. That kind of detachment, because usually we're involved in our story. We really believe everything that's happening to us is actually happening to us, or we're creating the outcome. But when your chart is read, it's like it puts you in that natural state that Patanjali calls the witness. And from that witness state, you become the captain of your ship. You can direct your attention to anything within the field of possibilities. And then the seer, in the process of seeing, manifests that which is seen. So it's actually hand in hand with the yogic method.
Yeah. I just love the way you described all that. It was beautiful and really resonated strongly with my whole system, like a big yes. So you've already shared that Jyotisha doesn't equal astrology. However, oftentimes it gets conflated in that way or confused in that way. And so how does it differ from Western astrology? Can you kind of parse that out a little bit? Because they're two different systems.
Yeah, and that always becomes a really big question people ask until I start explaining, and then their eyes glaze over and they're like, wish I didn't ask. So, no, it's a big question. Everybody wants to know this question because we're more familiar with our Western sun sign. So people want to understand, okay, how is this different? And it really comes down to the different way each system sees the soul's journey. And that is based on astronomical calculations, right? So both systems agree that as is above, so is below. That's the definition of astrology. Whatever is happening in the cosmos above me is also happening on the micro level below. It's just that the way that the two systems calculate that correlation is different. That results in a very different way of seeing the soul's journey. So in the case of Western astrology, the calculation of time is much shorter. It's based on the movement of the sun through the equinoxes. We call this the tropical zodiac, and it equals a lifespan of about 100 years. We can calculate. And it's based on the sun, the movement of the sun, which is the personality, the ego, this lifetime. Vedic astrology is based on a sidereal calculation of zodiac. What does sidereal mean? It means pertaining to fixed stars. And the moon's movement across this background of 27 fixed stars. Without getting into too much detail, this kind of calculation can account for trillions of years that repeat over and over again. The Vedic concept of time is that it is unending, it is beginningless, and it is endless. And it goes through particular phases of time that are calculated. So how does this make our understanding of the soul's journey different? Is I can see my prior births in my Vedic birth chart. And I can see the timing exactly of the unfolding of my karma based on those prior births within my own lifetime, when things are going to happen, and why. That we learn from our chart. And we can also see the results of this lifetime in the future birth as well. So one of the main differences between the two systems is the expanse of time and the detail about the soul's journey within that expanse of time.
Yeah. That just makes me want to lie back a moment.
Exactly. Yeah, it's endlessly fascinating. I mean, this is why I love to show up for my work every day.
I bet it is. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm curious if there's something you can share with our listeners about the current transits or happenings taking place right now, according to Vedic astrology. Maybe just get a little head start on what's to come in 2025. And I think you've got some sessions coming up too that I can point folks to as well to listen.
Yeah, this current Sunday, December 8th, I'm going to be giving a live class that's free. Anybody can join on predictions and insights for 2025 according to Vedic astrology. So I'll go in more detail then, but in general, we have to look at the years between 2020 and 2030 as a repeat of 1960 to 1970. One of the things that astrologers do is we study patterns of time, because everything is repetitive in the universe, especially according to the Vedas. Everything repeats over and over again according to fixed calculations of time. So we are dealing with right now the repeat of a cycle that occurred 60 years ago. And it's very, very similar in terms of the kind of unrest, the turmoil, the big social change, the big spiritual shift that's coming. 1960 to 1970 was a dramatic moment of enlightenment. And it's happening also now side by side with the same things that were happening 1960 to 1970, which were, war, kids going off, being killed in Vietnam senselessly, a big clash in social values, the meeting of the old and the new. We can go on and on about all the similarities, space exploration, the invention of the technologies that we are now taking for granted. So it's a repeat of that. 2025 is a big pivotal year within the decade. Just like 2020 was, but we have some really big shifts in the major planets, in particular the planet Saturn. Whenever Saturn moves, it's a big global change. The most notable was when Saturn moved into Capricorn in 2020, January 17th, and the rest is history. Similarly, we're going to have a shift of Saturn into the sign of Pisces on 29th of March. That is going to change everything. Also, at the same time, a shift of the nodes. Mars is also in a debilitated position until June. So all this basically amounts to, between the start of the year and the end of June, we can expect to see some really big challenges in the world. I mean, I don't like to paint doom and gloom scenarios, but there is a big shift happening and there's a lot of violent conflict that could potentially arise. And I think that one of my mottos for 2025, and it's the mantra that I would like everybody to keep in their mind, is to see the miracle in the misfortune. We have to remember that we are co-creators with this display, and our mind, our power of perception is what determines the experience. This is how we use our free will. We don't want to hide in the corner and cry. We want to project the miracle within the misfortune. And there is a miracle within the misfortune. In 1960 to 1970, there was a lot of misfortune, but it was also a great time of consciousness expansion, upliftment, enlightenment. Everybody was getting into yoga and meditation. It really started that movement. Similarly, this is what we can expect in this decade. So the deeper the dark, the brighter the light. And we have to remember that, and we have to keep the faith and the hope. And it's also a time that will drive people towards spiritual practice, because the other thing that's happening is, technology is going to start taking off big time, especially artificial intelligence and the whole move towards singularity. And that can be kind of disconcerting for us in terms of jobs and a big shift in how things get done. At the same time, there are places that the computer can't go. The robot cannot recreate consciousness. The robot cannot create love. So these are the areas that become safe from the intrusion of a robot that can do things much, much, much better than anyone can do. This whole conversation could be recreated by AI. We could be enjoying ourselves somewhere, and the computer is taking care of our podcast. I mean, all that's already happening. It's coming in even greater force. But where the computer can't go is where we can go in meditation. So a big revolution can take place on the level of consciousness. We can really expand. We can really experience expanded states, things like telepathy, all the great powers that come when we unlock our higher consciousness. This is where we want to put our attention, not on all the violence and war and the financial crashes. These are important things. And if you're worried about it, you can talk to me about how it's going to impact you personally. But in general, the best use for us who have some kind of awareness of meditation consciousness, that's where we put our focus in 2025.
Thank you. And I'm sure our listeners might like to learn more from you on a personal level. So we've already mentioned the session you're doing on Sunday night that's free, and that's more, global. And so anything else, I'll share links for all of this, but how can our listeners best engage with you?
Yeah, if you would like to get a report about your Vedic moon sign, that's perhaps the entry point into how I approach Vedic astrology and how it relates to your own Vedic birth chart. So you can visit vedicmoonsigns.com, and you can find out your Vedic moon sign and even get a report about it. And then you'll be in my layer, so to speak, and you can find out all about my offerings. Or if you're interested in having a Vedic birth chart reading, you can write us at Namaste, 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 at Dr. Katy Jane, DrKatyJane.com. And we'll send you a link. You can sign up if you like.
And so even though you're over in India, you're taking sessions from people all over the world.
Yeah, I take sessions with people all over the world. And currently I'm in California until January, and then I'm going back to India.
Great. Yep.
So, but even when I'm in India, I still meet with clients.
Yeah. Well, this has been so very insightful and helpful. You always say things so clearly, Katy. I'd love to hear just a little more personal note from you. We often ask this at the end of the podcast to each of the guests that are here to give us a little insight into what kind of helps guide you through your life. What are the practices, the daily practices? What's your sadhana like that, supports you in your life's journey?
Well, I mean, for the last 40 years of my life at least, I've done daily asana, pranayama, meditation. Like, these are things I cannot live without. These are just, I mean, I don't know how people live without meditation because, I have to go into that kind of state and reinforce it every day for my own peace of mind and happiness and balance. So those are important. And then, I have also a Vedic Sanskrit chanting practice where I chant in Sanskrit. And, Sanskrit is really a technology for awakening higher states of consciousness. So that chanting is really, to me, like a tonification of my nervous system to enable, I think, a higher state of intelligent understanding. So that's what I practice. And then, I try to remain joyful. I think the biggest discipline that any of us can ever apply in our life is the power of our mental choice. Where will you put your attention? I really love A Course in Miracles. I'm a big fan of A Course in Miracles. And recently, since I've been in California, I've joined a group and we meet every week and study Course in Miracles. And this week's lesson was so good. I can see peace instead. There it is, sum right up. That's the spiritual practice. I can see peace instead. That's my choice. And you may not be somebody who can meditate or wants to or do this kind of discipline. That's okay. You don't have to. Just see peace instead.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Katy. It was really joyful and delightful for me to be in conversation here with you today, to hear you speak again on these subjects that you know so well, that you've practiced for decades, that you embody. And I look forward to the next time we're in conversation again.
Oh, likewise. It's always so good. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks.
If you'd like to learn more about who we are and what we do, visit us at innerpeaceyogatherapy.com.